Hi everybody, very welcome to Mentor and yet another video podcast. As always, I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. Today on the video, I'm going to be talking about one of the strangest looking aircraft that I've ever seen. Picture a love child between a Zeppelin and a glider. Yes, we are going to be talking about the newly revealed Otto Celera 500L. And in the episode, I am going to be explaining laminar flow to you and what that has to do with the Celera 500L, and also why I think that this aircraft has the potential to revolutionize a part of the aviation business. So stay tuned.
Wind 31016, everyone right, right on. Third one, 31 right.
Delta 260, reduce.
This video is brought to you in cooperation with Brilliant. Now, you are probably finding yourself, just as I have been for the last few months, trying to homeschool your children and finding that that is actually much harder than you thought it would be. So, I have been looking for ways to make that more fun, entertaining, and more efficient for everyone involved. So I have been using Brilliant with my 10-year-old son. And turns out that he loves working with, for example, their brain teasers and their brain puzzles, and it's just much more fun. They have a really interactive way of learning. They kind of teach you in steps, so they go for something that's really simple and then they make it more and more complicated until you find yourself solving situations and problems that you never thought you'd be able to do. Now, if this sounds interesting to you and you're interested in maths, physics, or maybe building algorithms, well then use the link here below. It will give you a whopping 20% off their normal annual fee, but it's completely free to go and check it out. So do that after the video. All right, guys, so back in 2017, there was a picture released of a very strange looking aircraft. The picture was taken in Victorville in California in the United States, and it basically looked like a bullet with wings, right? It's a white aircraft which had one push propeller at the back and very straight wings, and it just looked weird. So there was a lot of discussions on different forums at the time of what this could potentially be. Was this a military application of some sort, or what was it? It was all very hush-hush and no one really knew. But very soon we started to hear that this could potentially be the work of a company called Otto Aviation. Now, Otto Aviation is the brainchild of a man called Bill Otto, who has had a lot of work inside of the American government, and he is known to think outside of the box. And this aircraft definitely is something out of the box. So these last weeks, we started to get to know a little bit more about what this strange bullet-looking aircraft was. And it is called the Otto Celera 500L. And it packs some truly amazing performance figures. Or how about this? Picture this aircraft flying with a range of 4,500 nautical miles. That's the equivalent of what we can fly with a 737 or an Airbus 320neo. It can do those 4,500 nautical miles with a max cruise speed of around 400 knots, which is also not far away from what we are doing. But the fuel consumption that it's claiming is between 18 to 25 miles per gallon. In European terms, that's about 10 kilometers per liter, which is pretty much what I am using for my Audi Q5, which is sitting at the back. It can carry a payload of 6 adult passengers, and inside of the cabin you can actually stand completely straight if you're as tall as me. You have 6 foot 2 inches in the cabin, which is 188 centimeters. Now, this is truly amazing figures, okay? And all of this combined means that they are claiming, Otto Aviation are claiming on their website, which I'll link to, by the way, that you can fly this aircraft with an hourly cost of about $328 per hour. Now you might say, well, that doesn't sound very cheap, Peter. $328 per hour is quite a lot of money. But then you have to remember that with these kind of performance figures and this kind of range and speed, you normally have to go up to a private jet, and not even the smallest private jets, maybe a medium-sized private jet. And if you want to fly one of those, it will cost you between, well, $2,000 to $3,000 per hour. So that's 10 times more than what this is costing, almost. Now, how is this possible? How can they claim to have this kind of performance? Well, it turns out that the answer to that is twofold. First of all, it has to do with a revolutionary engine that you're using. Now, you might think that if you're going to be flying at these kind of speeds with this kind of range, you need a jet engine. But here is the first difference. So they are using a newly certified engine called the Red A03. And this is a 12-cylinder normal combustion engine. It is divided into two banks of 6 cylinders, and these two banks are independently kind of controlled, electrically controlled from each other, which means that if you have a failure in one of the banks, the remaining 6 cylinders would still work, and that is supposed to provide you with the kind of redundancy that you'll get from a multi-engine aircraft. It is built completely in aluminium. It produces 550 horsepower, and it can run on both biodiesel and Jet A1 fuel. All right. So this engine is extremely powerful and it's extremely efficient, and it drives the one propeller, the push propeller that it uses. So that's the first thing, okay? Remember that using one engine, and especially a high performance normal combustion engine, means that you have significantly lower maintenance costs than you have on two jet engines, not to mention just the price of the actual engine, where jet engines will cost you millions of dollars and the V12 will not. So here lies a little bit of the price difference, all right? But the really ingenious thing with this aircraft is its shape. What Bill Otto realized was that you need to do something about the drag. Okay, conventional aircraft have kind of come as far as they can when it comes to drag reduction. The wings, stabilizers and fins that we're using on conventional aircraft are extremely efficient at the moment, but we haven't really worked too much with the body and other parts of the aircraft, which still produces an enormous amount of drag. And what Bill Otto basically did here was he just thought outside of the box, thinking, okay, so what can we do in order to reduce this drag? And he started looking into producing as much of the components as possible to utilize laminar flow. Now you might ask yourself, what is laminar flow? What is it talking about? And the best way to explain this is that air is kind of like a fluid. It has viscosity, which means that air tends to stick to surfaces, which means that it divides itself up to layers, which flows at different speeds. So the layer closest to the skin tends to slow down and kind of stick, and then the layers outside goes increasingly faster. And as long as you have laminar flow, well then these layers, they cross each other without interacting too much. They kind of glide on top of each other, and just like the decks of a card, if you spread them out, they will kind of move in a laminar flow without interacting with each layer, okay? However, that only works up to a certain speed. So because of the viscosity of the air and something called a Reynolds number, which I'm not going to go in too much deeper in, if the speed increases, at some point this laminar flow will turn into what we call a turbulent flow instead. The best way to show that is if you've been looking out over a waterfall, you notice that as the water goes over the edge, it tends to be fully see-through, fully transparent. But then as it goes past the edge of the waterfall and it starts accelerating, it will turn this white color. And when it goes from that transparent laminar flow into turbulent flow is when it turns over to white, okay? And what's actually happening is that the water in that case start to interact, the layers start to interact with each other, they start to rub up against each other, and that creates vortexes, okay? Another way that you can have a look at how this actually looks is in the comfort of your own home. If you go to your closest water tap and you start opening the water tap with very slow flow, you will initially see that you have clear water coming out. But as you increase that flow, that water will turn into white. And that is the transition between laminar flow to turbulent flow. Now, this turbulent flow, when these layers are rubbing up against each other, will create little vortexes. And in order for these vortexes to be created, you need energy. Right? And that energy needs to be taken from somewhere. And in the case of an aircraft, when it goes from laminar flow to turbulent flow, that energy will be taken from the aircraft, and the aircraft needs to take that energy from its fuel tanks. So this means that the more you can create the aircraft to only have laminar flow in their normal cruise speeds, the more efficient the aircraft will be. And you can do that by shaping all of the components in a way that allows the speed to keep the laminar flow for as long as possible. And this is essentially what Otto Aviation have done. That's why it looks like that. That's why it looks so weird. And they claim that by using laminar flow components on the aircraft, they've actually managed to get the overall drag down with 59%. That's 59% lower drag than on a conventional aircraft of the same size. Okay? You might ask yourself, why doesn't everyone do this? Why doesn't all of the aircraft in the world look like that? The fact is that you can only build them so big. If you start to make them much bigger than the Celera 500, then the laminar flow will not work, because you have the viscosity of the air is a constant and it needs to flow over the surface. If you make it much bigger, the air is still going to have to accelerate past the laminar flow line. So you can't make it much bigger. However, Otto Aviation has said that they have a version coming out of the Celera 500 called the Celera 1000, which is about 20% bigger than the current model, which will increase the amount of people and payload and potential cargo that it can carry with a lot, without, increasing the cost of running it with too much. So this is how they have managed to achieve this, guys. They're using this highly efficient V12 engine, a push propeller. And the push propeller, by the way, they have a push propeller because then the propeller and the slipstream from the propeller will not cause the laminar flow to stop. Okay, so if you have a propeller in front of the aircraft or in front of the wings, the slipstream will cause a bit of drag. But if you have it behind, then yes, you will have a little bit of a disturbed airstream going into the propeller. But because it is so aerodynamic, that will be almost negligent, and the airstream from the propeller will not disturb. So that's why they have a push propeller rather than a propeller in the front. So how far along are they then? Well, they have done 35 different test flights with this aircraft, which means they have been able to verify that these performance calculations and the performance figures that they have are actually correct. Okay, but they still have a long way to go. They have managed to secure the first wave of funding, and now they're looking into starting their certification process with the FAA, and then they're looking into a second and a third round of financing, and also finding space to build a full-scale factory in order to start delivering these aircraft. They're planning on trying to deliver their first aircraft around 2025, and that's probably where they will get certification as well. I know that there are people out there that's looking at this and saying that, well, we've seen these kind of aircraft before. They come in, they claim that they have these performance figures, and then they just blow up like air bubbles. They never become anything. And there is a possibility that the Celera 500L is one of those as well. However, these guys are actually flying this with a full-scale prototype. So they have been able to prove that they're not lying about the numbers. These numbers actually do exist. So why am I so excited about this aircraft then? Well, it is what it represents. The fact that it is so efficient and the fact that its cost is so low means that if this comes to production, and if the purchase price of this aircraft, which we don't yet know, but it's likely going to be not in the millions, rather in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, but if that is low enough, it means that this has the potential to revolutionize the small charter and air taxi business. Because if you think about it, the only people right now that can afford private flights are either the super rich, the millionaires who have enough money to get access to a proper big private jet or even own a private jet. And then you have the enthusiasts, the people who owns their own Cessna or maybe a Beech King Air or a DA-42. That could be like maybe private business owners that needs to do shorter trips, or just enthusiasts. But if you want to go and you want to travel for a larger distance, like in this case 4,000 nautical miles, which is intra-Europe or between any city pair in the continental United States, the only real choice you have at the moment is to fly commercially, to fly with a normal aircraft. But of course now, during the pandemic, our travel patterns are starting to change, and we're starting to look at things like, maybe I don't want to go to a crowded airport. Maybe I don't want to go into a big aircraft full of passengers if I can avoid it. So if they can manage to produce what they're promising, then I could see private taxi companies buying up a couple of these Celera 500Ls and starting to provide people like, a big family, for example, with the possibility of actually flying privately for a longer trip and reasonably affordable. Because the prices would, according to their own calculations and according to my own calculations, not be too different from what a slightly expensive normal airline ticket would be. And if that happens, you will see a boom of these airlines popping up all over the place. You will see city pairs being connected that haven't been connected before, because before, with the previous cost structure, it wasn't financially viable to fly between these city pairs in places like maybe Scotland, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Canada, Russia, the outback in Australia, places where airlines wouldn't have looked to actually connect city pairs. Now you can. And that means that can be a huge lift in the economy for these smaller cities, for the economy in these smaller cities, for companies that are based in these smaller cities. And on top of this, and this is where it starts to get really exciting, is that Otto Aviation have already said that the Celera 500 and the 1000 that might come after it is fully prepared for electric drive if needed. Right? They know that there's going to be highly efficient electrical or hybrid engine coming, and this aircraft can be retrofitted and can be fitted with these engines. And because of the extreme efficiency of the aircraft, you could actually get some decent mileage out of already existing electrical engines. And of course, what you're looking at then is an arm of the aviation industry that could be both economical for normal people, just like you and I, and it could be environmentally friendly. In fact, it already is. I mean, it doesn't cost more than driving a normal car to drive this aircraft, and you can fit 6 people into it. And it could have a fantastic effect on the local economy. On top of that, these aircrafts are going to need pilots. So it means that there's going to be a boom in the need of pilots, probably low-hour pilots, because it's likely that this is going to be a single pilot aircraft, even though I've reached out to Otto Aviation, but I haven't heard back from them. But even if it is a single pilot aircraft, if it is in taxi operation, it's likely that it's still going to be dual pilot operation. And even so, there's still going to be new jobs that didn't exist before. And this makes me really happy. When you have the combination of a potential lower cost base, more economic, help to local industries, much better environmental footprint, and more jobs for pilots, these are all pluses in my book. So, Otto Aviation, if you're watching this, please let me get my hands on one of your aircraft. I would love to try it out. I'd love to do a proper evaluation video of this aircraft, and I really hope that what you are promising will actually come to pass and that we'll see a completely new arm of the aviation business appearing in front of us or our eyes within the next couple of years. That's it, guys. That's what I had about the Celera 500. What do you think about it? Please put your comments in the comments below, and we can have a discussion about it, or come into the Mentour Aviation app and let's discuss it in there. And by the way, guys, I am turning 39. I know, next Tuesday on the 22nd of September. And in order to celebrate that, I have put on a 30% sale on all my merchandise for this weekend. So for the next 2 days, you will be able to get 30% off if you use the coupon code PILOT30 in my merch store. I'm gonna link to it up here. So you can get this t-shirt, or you can get a Positive Attitude t-shirt, or maybe a Team Boeing, Team Airbus, Team Bombardier, Team Engineering, or anything, or a nice cup of coffee. Okay? So go and check out the merch store, get yourself something at a 30% discount. And I also want to send a huge thank you to my sponsor, Brilliant. Okay? If you want to go in and you want to learn about math, physics, and maybe build your own algorithm in a fun and constructive way, well then, use the link here below. You'll get a whopping 20% off the annual fee of Brilliant, or at least go and check it out. That's all I ask from you. Have an absolutely fantastic day, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Right guys, I really hope that you liked that. If you want more content like that, more aviation content, well then, check this out. I hope that you have subscribed to the channel and that you've highlighted the little notification bell. See you inside of the Mentour Aviation app, and have an absolutely fantastic day. Bye-bye.